The conference room went dead silent when my sister Tiffany slammed both hands on the mahogany table. "So you're just going to sit there and watch Mom and Dad lose everything $39,000, Kat? That's nothing to you now." Her voice rose to that pitch I knew so well, the one that had gotten her out of trouble since she was 5. "You're sitting on millions and you won't even help your own family." My mother stood behind her like a sentinel, arms crossed her face, a masterpiece of wounded martyrdom. My father stared at his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. The lawyer and the trust administrator watched me with expressionless faces, waiting. I looked at my sister's desperate eyes, my mother's cold fury, my father's cowardice. 29 years of guilt pressed down on my shoulders like a physical weight. 29 years of being told that family came first, that saying no was selfish, that I owed them everything. I opened my mouth and felt the word rise from somewhere deep in my chest, somewhere I didn't even know existed. "No." The word hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. If you've ever been the family ATM, if you've ever been called heartless for having boundaries, stay with me because what happens next will blow your mind. Smash that like button and subscribe because this is where things get really interesting. Drop a comment and tell me if you would have had the guts to do what I did. Now let me take you back 6 months because you need to see exactly how I ended up in that room facing down my entire family with lawyers as witnesses. 6 months earlier, I was drowning in hot water and grease at the Maple Steel Diner. It was 20 minutes to midnight, and I'd been on my feet for 16 hours straight. Steam rose from the industrial sink, fogging my glasses as I attacked a mountain of dishes crusted with dried food. My back screamed. My hands were raw and wrinkled. And somewhere in my apron pocket, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. I knew without looking it was them. It was always them. Another crisis. Another demand. Another emergency that somehow always required my time, my money, or both. Miguel, my coworker, and one of the few genuine people I'd met in this city, was grumbling in Spanish as he wiped down table 6 for the 3rd time. "That guy just left me a $2 tip on a $50 check. $2, Kat. What am I supposed to do with that? Buy half a gallon of gas?" I tried to smile, but my face felt stiff. "Everyone's having a rough day, Miguel. At least we've got jobs." The words came out automatically that practiced optimism I'd been forcing myself to maintain for years. Be grateful. Don't complain. Things could be worse. That was the soundtrack of my life. "You sound like my abuela," Miguel said, but not unkindly. "Always looking on the bright side even when everything's on fire." Everything was on fire, actually. I'd been working 2 jobs for the past 3 years. During the day, I was a temporary clinical coordinator at a hospital across town, managing schedules and dealing with the constant chaos of understaffed departments. At night, I was here washing dishes for $9 an hour, plus a cut of the tips if Ruth, the manager, was feeling generous. I lived in a studio apartment the size of a walk-in closet, ate ramen 4 nights a week, and hadn't bought new clothes in 18 months. Meanwhile, my sister Tiffany lived in a 4-bedroom house with a 2-car garage, drove a brand new SUV, and somehow never had money when the bills came due. My phone buzzed again. I dried my hands on my apron and finally looked at the screen. The group chat was exploding. "Mom, Kat, did you see my message about the church bake sale? I need you to make 3 cherry pies by Saturday." Tiffany: "Also, I need you to watch the boys Friday night. David and I have dinner reservations. Can you be there by 6? Mom: "And don't forget your father's birthday dinner Sunday. We're doing it at our place. Bring a salad and maybe that potato casserole everyone likes." I scrolled up. Not a single message about the thing that actually mattered. Not one word about my interview. I'd told them 3 weeks ago. I'd reminded them twice. I'd even sent a photo of the confirmation email. Tomorrow morning, I had a final interview in Raleigh for a regional program coordinator position at Atria Ortho, one of the most respected orthopedic surgery centers on the East Coast. The job came with a real salary benefits a retirement plan and the possibility of a future that wasn't buried in dish suds and other people's leftover fries. Tiffany had responded with, "That's nice." Mom had sent a thumbs up emoji. Dad hadn't responded at all. And now, the night before the biggest interview of my life, they wanted pies, babysitting, and potato casserole. I typed out, "I can't make the pies, Mom. I have my interview in Raleigh tomorrow morning, early flight." I hesitated, then added, "I told you about this." The 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Mom." Oh, Katerina, I forgot all about that. Well, can't you make them tonight? You're already up. It was almost midnight. I'd been on my feet for 16 hours. Tiffany, wait, you're going to Raleigh for how long? Me, just tomorrow. Interview at noon. I'll be back late. Tiffany, oh, perfect, so you can still watch the boys Friday. They're really excited to see Aunt Kat. The boys had never once expressed excitement about seeing me. The last time I'd babysat, they'd locked me out of the house while I was taking out the trash and thought it was hilarious when I had to call Tiffany to come back and let me in. She'd been annoyed that I'd interrupted her dinner. Me, I can't, Tiff. I might need to go back to Raleigh this weekend if they want a second interview. The 3 dots appeared from my mother, then my sister, then my mother again. My phone started ringing. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. I turned off the ringer and shoved the phone back in my pocket. Trouble in paradise. Ruth appeared beside me, her lined face sympathetic. She'd seen me take these calls before, had watched me leave mid-shift more than once when Tiffany had an emergency that usually turned out to be that she didn't feel like watching her own children. Just family stuff, I said, scrubbing harder at a particularly stubborn pan. Family stuff? Ruth repeated like she was tasting the words and finding them bitter. Honey, I've known you for 2 years now. I've seen you give up shifts because your sister needed a babysitter. I've watched you work doubles to make up the rent money you lent your parents. I've heard you on the phone apologizing for things that weren't your fault. She pulled the pan out of my hands. When's your interview? Tomorrow, noon. In Raleigh? Yes, ma'am. You gonna make those pies tonight? I looked at her, this 60-something woman who'd worked at Maple Steel for 30 years, who had 3 kids and 7 grandchildren and had somehow never lost the light in her eyes. No, I said. The word felt strange in my mouth. No, I'm not making the pies. Ruth smiled. Good. Now finish your shift and get some sleep. You've got a future to catch. But sleep didn't come easily. I lay in my narrow bed staring at the water stain on the ceiling. My phone face down on the nightstand because I couldn't handle seeing the notifications. 23 missed calls, 46 text messages. I didn't need to read them to know what they said. I was selfish. I was ungrateful. Family helps family, after everything they'd done for me. What had they done for me exactly? I tried to catalog it lying there in the dark. They'd raised me, fed me, kept a roof over my head. That was what parents were supposed to do. That was the baseline, not a debt to be repaid for the rest of my life. But they'd made me feel like I owed them everything, like I'd been born already in their debt. When I was 16, I'd gotten a job at the grocery store. My first paycheck, I'd been so proud. I'd planned to save half and use the other half to buy new shoes because mine had holes in the soles. My mother had seen the check on the counter. Oh, perfect timing, she'd said. The electric bill is due, and we're a little short. She'd taken $120 of my $150 paycheck. The remaining $30 had gone to gas money for my father, who'd needed to drive me to work since we only had one car. I'd never bought those shoes. That had been the first time. It hadn't been the last. When I was 23, I'd saved up $4,000 for community college. I was going to finally finish my degree. Tiffany's car had broken down. It's an emergency, Mom had said. You can go to college anytime. Your sister needs a car for her job. Tiffany had picked out a car that cost $6,500. I'd emptied my college fund. My mother had guilted our aunt into covering the rest. Tiffany had totaled that car 6 months later, driving drunk. No one had ever mentioned paying me back. I'd been paying for things ever since. Tiffany's credit card debt, my parents' mortgage when Dad lost his job, the down payment on Tiffany's house, her wedding, her kids' daycare, always with the promise that they'd pay me back. They never did, and I never asked because asking made me the villain. The worst part was that I'd convinced myself this was normal. This was what families did. You sacrificed, you helped, you didn't keep score. Except I was the only one not keeping score. Everyone else knew exactly what I had and exactly how to get it from me. The next morning, I got up before dawn. I'd bought the plane ticket 3 weeks ago when I'd first gotten the interview request. It had cost me $280 I couldn't really afford, but it was cheaper than driving 8 hours round trip. I'd packed my interview outfit, my portfolio, my letters of recommendation. I'd practiced my answers to every possible question. I was ready. At the airport, I turned my phone off completely. I couldn't handle the guilt right now. I needed to focus. The interview was at Atria Ortho's main campus, a sprawling medical complex that made my current hospital look like a urgent care clinic. Dr. Leah Morton was waiting in the conference room, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through any nonsense. She was the regional clinical director, and she had a reputation for being brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. "Ms. Vance," she said, shaking my hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. "I've been looking forward to this conversation." The interview was supposed to last an hour. We talked for almost 3. Dr. Morton didn't ask the usual questions about my greatest weakness or where I saw myself in 5 years. Instead, she laid out real problems, actual scenarios from the hospitals in their network. "You've got a surgical team that's consistently running 30 minutes behind schedule. The nurses are frustrated, the patients are anxious, and the surgeons are blaming everyone but themselves. What do you do?" I didn't give her corporate speak. I told her the truth. "I'd start by shadowing the team for a week. You can't fix what you don't understand. Then I'd bring everyone together not to point fingers, but to map out the actual workflow. Usually, when teams are running behind, it's not because anyone's incompetent. It's because the system is broken. Maybe pre-op isn't communicating with the surgical team. Maybe equipment isn't being prepped efficiently. Maybe the surgeons are scheduling procedures back-to-back without accounting for complexity variations." I leaned forward. "People don't fail systems. Systems fail people." Dr. Morton's eyebrows went up. "That's very idealistic." "It's not idealistic, it's practical," I said. "You can threaten and punish your team into compliance, but that just creates resentment and turnover. Or you can actually solve the problems and then everyone's job gets easier. Happy staff give better patient care. Better patient care means better outcomes. Better outcomes mean better reputations and more revenue. It's not complicated, it's just hard work." She smiled, then really smiled. "You're not afraid to speak your mind." "I'm tired of wasting time on politics when patients are waiting," I said, and realized too late that maybe I shouldn't have been quite so blunt. But Dr. Morton just laughed. "You're hired." I blinked. "I'm sorry." "You're hired," she repeated. "Pending background check and references, obviously, but unless you're secretly a serial killer, the job is yours. Regional Program Coordinator. Salary is $85,000 base plus benefits and quarterly bonuses based on performance metrics. You'd oversee clinical coordination for 6 hospitals in the network, manage a team of 12, and report directly to me. You can start in 3 weeks. I need someone who actually gives a damn and isn't afraid to tell surgeons when they're being idiots. You fit the bill." $85,000. I made $28,000 between both my current jobs. This was more than I'd ever imagined. This was a real career. This was a life. "I accept," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thank you, Dr. Morton." "Call me Leah," she said. "Welcome to the team, Cat." I floated out of that building. I had done it. I had actually done it. Years of night school, of working doubles, of sacrificing everything to stay afloat, while everyone around me treated me like an ATM, and I'd finally caught a break. I turned my phone on as I waited for my Uber to the airport. 63 notifications. I ignored all of them and called the one person who might actually be happy for me. "Maple Steel Diner, this is Ruth." "I got it," I said. "I got the job." Ruth's whoop of joy nearly deafened me. "I knew it. I knew you would." "Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you." "Thank you," I said, and my voice cracked because she sounded more excited for me than my own mother had ever been about anything I'd accomplished. "Thank you for believing in me." "You believed in yourself, baby girl. I just had the good sense to see it. Now, when do you start?" 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Ruth repeated. "You putting in your notice at the hospital?" "Tomorrow." "What about here?" I hesitated. I needed the money. Every dollar mattered. But I also needed time to find an apartment in Raleigh to pack to prepare for this massive change in my life. "I'd like to give 2 weeks if that's okay. I need the income, but I also need time to move." 2 weeks and not a day more, Ruth said firmly. "You've earned this, Cat. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about it." Too late. The guilt was already creeping in. 3 weeks. That meant I'd miss Tiffany's kid's birthday party. I'd miss my dad's birthday dinner. I'd miss whatever else my family had planned that they'd assumed I'd be available for. I called my mother from the airport. She answered on the first ring. "Katerina Marie Vance." I have been calling you all day. Where have you been? I told you, Mom, I had my interview in Raleigh. Oh, the flatness in her voice was worse than anger. How did it go? I got the job. Silence. Then, that's nice, honey. Listen about those pies for tomorrow. I told everyone you were making them, so you really need to. Mom, did you hear me? I got the job. In Raleigh. I'm moving. Another pause. Moving. What do you mean moving? The job is in Raleigh. It's a regional position. I'll be overseeing clinical coordination for 6 hospitals. The salary is $85,000 a year. Us? $85,000. Now she sounded interested. That's wonderful, sweetheart. When do you start? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That's so soon. Well, this is exciting. Your father will be so proud. And Tiffany will be thrilled that you're finally getting ahead. You'll have to help her out with her credit cards now that you'll have all that money. And there it was. Not congratulations. Not we're so proud of you. Just the immediate calculation of how my success could benefit everyone else. I have to go, Mom. My flight's boarding. Wait, what about the pies? I'm not making the pies, I said. Ask Tiffany to pick some up from the bakery. But I already told everyone you were making them from scratch. It'll be so embarrassing if we show up with store-bought. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I'd never hung up on my mother before. I waited for the guilt to overwhelm me, but instead all I felt was tired, so incredibly tired. The flight home was short, but I spent every minute of it staring out the window, watching the clouds, and thinking about what my life was about to become. A good job, a real salary. Maybe I could finally have savings. Maybe I could take a vacation. Maybe I could buy clothes that weren't from the clearance rack. Maybe I could breathe. I got back to my apartment at 10 p.m. I had to be at work at the hospital at 6 the next morning, which meant I'd get about 5 hours of sleep if I was lucky. I dropped my bag by the door and collapsed onto my couch. My phone buzzed immediately. Tiffany, Mom said you got some fancy job. Does this mean you can finally pay me back that money I lent you for your car? I stared at that message. She had never lent me money for my car. I had given her money for her car. Twice. Me, you never lent me money, Tiff. I lent you money, $6,500 actually. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Tiffany, that was a gift. Me, no it wasn't. Tiffany. Whatever. Since you're going to be making all that money, you can help me out now. I'm in a bind. Of course she was. Tiffany was always in a bind. Me, what kind of bind? Tiffany. I'll explain later. Right now, I need you to watch The Boys Friday like we discussed. We hadn't discussed anything. She'd announced it and expected compliance. Me, I can't. I'm apartment hunting in Raleigh this weekend. The phone rang immediately. Tiffany, I let it ring. It stopped and immediately started again. I turned off the ringer. A text from my mother appeared. Your sister is very upset. Why are you being so difficult? Why was I being difficult? I'd just landed the biggest opportunity of my career, and my family was upset that I couldn't babysit and bake pies. The absurdity of it hit me all at once. I started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound in my empty apartment. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in boundary testing. My family had realized I was serious about the move, which meant they needed to extract maximum value from me before I left. Tiffany needed money for car repairs. My parents needed help with their mortgage payment. Tiffany needed me to babysit every other night because she and David were working on their marriage, which apparently involved a lot of expensive dinners and none of the actual work of raising their children. My mother needed help organizing a fundraiser at church. My father needed me to drive him to appointments because his car was making a funny noise. I said no to everything. Every single request I said no. And each time I did, the guilt felt a little less crushing. The anger from my family got more intense, but I was 8 hours away from Raleigh now, job hunting and apartment hunting and building a life they couldn't touch. I found a place on my 3rd trip to the city. It was a small 1-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe and completely blessedly mine. The rent was more than I'd ever paid before, but with my new salary, it was manageable. I signed the lease the same day, using that $500 from Arthur Sterling as the security deposit. I'd never forgotten that night at the diner when the mysterious older gentleman had left me that money and that cryptic note. I'd kept the note in my wallet all these months. Kindness is a rare skill. What's your name? I'd written my response on a napkin and left it with Ruth to give to him if he ever came back, Katerina Vance. And kindness shouldn't be rare. Thank you for seeing it. He'd returned twice more over the months. Each time he sat at the counter, ordered the meatloaf special, and watched me work with those sharp, assessing eyes. He never said much, but he always left a $100 tip. Ruth told me his name was Arthur Sterling and that he'd made his fortune in something mysterious and probably not entirely legal, though nothing had ever been proven. He's a character, she'd said, but he's got a good eye for people. If he likes you, it means something. On my last shift at Maple Steel, Mr. Sterling was there. He waited until my break and gestured to the stool beside him. "So you got the job," he said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" He smiled a thin curve of lips that held secrets. "I know many things, Ms. Vance, including that your family is going to make your life very difficult in the coming months." I stiffened. "How?" "Because families like yours always do," he interrupted. "They've been using you as a personal ATM and free labor service for years. Now you're moving away and leveling up, which means they're losing access to their favorite resource. They're going to panic, they're going to demand, and eventually they're going to make a play that's so outrageous, so beyond the pale, that you'll finally see them for exactly what they are." His words chilled me. "You don't know my family. I know the type, and I know you, Katerina. You're strong and smart and capable, but you've been taught to believe that your worth is measured by how much you can give away. Someone needs to teach you that no is a complete sentence." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Not a regular business card, but something heavier, embossed elegant. "When they make their move and they will call me, I can help." "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Because kindness is a rare skill," he said, echoing his own words from months ago. "And I collect rare things." He left a $100 bill on the counter and walked out of the diner. I looked at the card. No company name, just a phone number and an address in Raleigh. Arthur Sterling Fiduciary Services. I moved to Raleigh on a Tuesday. I'd hired the cheapest moving company I could find, which meant 2 guys with a truck who took 4 hours to move my meager possessions into the new apartment. I'd accumulated so little over the years. Most of my money had gone to my family. I had a bed, a couch, a TV from 2015, some kitchen supplies and clothes. That was it. My entire life fit in a truck with room to spare. My cousin Nora came to help me unpack. She was my favorite relative, maybe my only real ally in the family. She was my age, worked in marketing in Charlotte, and had somehow managed to escape the gravitational pull of family obligation that had trapped me. "This place is cute," she said, looking around the empty living room. "It's very you." "It's very beige," I corrected. "Same thing?" She handed me a bottle of wine. "Housewarming gift. We're going to drink this, and you're going to tell me what the hell is going on with Aunt Evelyn and Tiffany because the family group chat has been absolutely unhinged." I hadn't looked at the Vance crew chat in a week. I'd muted it after the 100th message asking when I was coming back to help with various crises. "Show me," I said. Nora pulled out her phone and scrolled. "Okay, so your mom has been posting about how worried she is about you moving so far away, which would be sweet, except she keeps adding things like, 'I just hope she remembers her family,' and 'It's hard when children forget where they came from.'" "I'm an hour flight away, not on Mars," I muttered. "Tiffany's been worse." Nora kept scrolling. "She's been posting about how some people think they're better than everyone else just because they get a good job. And there's this whole thread about how you refused to help with her car payment, and now she might lose her car, and how is she supposed to get her kids to school? Her husband has a car, and they live 4 blocks from the school. Logic has no place in a Tiffany meltdown," Nora said. "Oh, and your mom's been calling my mom trying to get information about your finances, specifically asking if you mentioned stock options or bonuses." That made me look up. "Why would she ask about that?" Nora's expression turned serious. "Because they're planning something, Kat. I don't know what, but I know that look. They're calculating. They think you're coming into real money and they want their cut." "It's a job, not a lottery win." "To them, it's the same thing. You've always been broke. Now you're not. That makes you a target." She poured us both generous glasses of wine. "You need to be careful. Don't tell them anything about your finances. Don't give them your new address. And for the love of God, don't lend them money." "I'm not going to." You say that now, but your mom is really good at the guilt thing, and Tiffany's got the whole but we're family manipulation down to a science. I took a long drink of wine. I'm done being their safety net, Nora. I'm done. She clinked her glass against mine. I'll drink to that. The next 3 weeks were the best of my entire adult life. Work was challenging but rewarding. Dr. Morton Leah was tough but fair, and she seemed genuinely invested in my success. My team was smart and hardworking. We were making real changes, fixing broken systems, improving patient care. I felt like I was finally doing something that mattered. I stopped answering every call from my family. I responded to texts when I had time and energy, which wasn't often. The guilt was still there, a constant low-level hum in the background, but it was getting quieter. I was learning what it felt like to prioritize myself, and it was intoxicating. Then came the photos. Nora had visited again, and we'd decorated the apartment. Nothing expensive, just some throws from Target and plants from Home Depot, but it looked like a real home. My home. Nora had taken pictures and posted them on Instagram, tagging me with captions about new beginnings and strong women and all that aspirational stuff. Within an hour, my phone exploded. Mom, what a beautiful apartment. It must cost a fortune. Tiffany, wow, Kat looks like you're doing really well for yourself. Must be nice. Dad, proud of you, sweetheart. That's a really nice place. You must be making good money to afford something like that. Aunt Linda, gorgeous. Your mother told me about your new job. She said you're making 6 figures now. I wasn't making 6 figures. 85,000 was solidly 5 figures, but apparently my mother had been embellishing. The requests started almost immediately. Tiffany, since you're doing so well, I was hoping we could talk about helping me out with something. Mom, your father and I are so proud of you. We were hoping you might be able to help us with a few things now that you're settled. Dad, call me when you get a chance. Need to discuss something important. I called my father because he was usually the most reasonable. That was a mistake. Hey, sweetheart, he said, his voice warm. How's the new place? It's good, Dad, really good. That's wonderful. You deserve it after all your hard work. He paused. Listen, your mother and I wanted to talk to you about something. We're in a bit of a bind financially. The house needs some repairs, the roof is leaking, and we had to put it on the credit card. We were hoping you might be able to help us out. Maybe $5,000, we'll pay you back when we can. $5,000, my entire emergency fund. The money I'd finally managed to save over the past 3 months of living frugally and working overtime. Dad, I just moved. I had to pay first month last month in security deposit. My savings are wiped out. But you're making such good money now. Surely you can spare. No, I said. The word came out harder than I intended. No, I can't. I'm sorry about the roof, but I can't give you $5,000. Silence. Then, your mother's going to be very disappointed. We thought now that you were doing well, you'd want to help family. I do want to help, but I can't afford. You can afford a fancy apartment. This isn't fancy, Dad. This is normal. This is what people pay for a safe place to live. We're just asking for help, Katerina. That's what families do. Then why don't you ask Tiffany? She's got a much bigger house than I do. Tiffany has kids. She's got expenses. I have expenses too. It's not the same thing. His voice had gone cold. We've always been there for you. We raised you. We gave you everything. And now when we need help, you turn your back on us. The guilt crashed over me like a wave, but underneath it was something else. Anger. Hot, righteous anger. I'm not turning my back on anyone, I said carefully. But I can't set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I need to take care of myself first. That's a very selfish attitude. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I'd never hung up on my father before. I'd never called them selfish or refused a direct request for money. I'd never put my needs first. It felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The fallout was immediate and nuclear. The family group chat exploded with messages about my selfishness, my ingratitude, how I'd changed, how money had corrupted me. Tiffany sent me a long text about how disappointed she was in me, how she'd always looked up to me, and how I was setting a terrible example for her children by refusing to help my parents in their time of need. I muted the chat and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I had 47 missed calls and 62 text messages, and 1 email from Arthur Sterling. They're panicking. It's going to get worse before it gets better. My offer stands. I didn't respond to the email. I didn't know what he wanted or why he was so invested in my family drama. Instead, I went to work and threw myself into a project redesigning the pre-op protocol for one of our busier hospitals. 2 weeks later, my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered without thinking. Katerina, finally, I've been trying to reach you for days. Hi, Mom, I've been busy with work. Too busy for your own mother. She laughed, but it had an edge. Listen, sweetheart. Your father and I and Tiffany and David have been talking, and we've decided to come visit you. We want to see your new place and spend some quality time together. We're thinking this weekend. We'll stay with you, of course. My stomach dropped. Mom, I can't host 4 people this weekend. My apartment only has 1 bedroom. Oh, that's fine. Your father and I can take the bedroom, and Tiffany and David can sleep on the couch. The boys can sleep on air mattresses. The boys, you're bringing Mason and Tyler. Of course they're so excited to see Aunt Kat's new place. Plus, Tiffany and David could really use a break. Maybe you could watch the boys for an evening while we all go out to a nice dinner. Since you refused to babysit last month, you owe them that much. This was insane. Mom, I can't have 6 people stay at my apartment. It's too small, and I have to work. It's the weekend. I'm on call. On call for what? For emergencies. I'm the regional coordinator. If there's a crisis at any of our hospitals, I need to be available. Oh, don't be dramatic. Nothing's going to happen. We'll see you Saturday morning. We're flying in at 9. She hung up before I could protest further. I stared at my phone in disbelief. They were just showing up. They hadn't asked permission, they'd issued a decree. And they expected me to house them, feed them, and babysit on top of everything else. I pulled up Arthur Sterling's email and hit reply. They're coming this weekend, unannounced, and they're planning to stay with me. His response came within minutes. Perfect timing. Meet me at my office tomorrow at 4 p.m. Bring nothing. I'll explain everything. The address is on my card. I should have been more suspicious. A mysterious older man with vague business dealings wanted to meet me privately to discuss my family problems. Every true crime podcast I'd ever listened to was screaming warnings. But something in me, some instinct I'd learned to trust during my years navigating the chaos of clinical coordination, told me that Arthur Sterling was exactly what I needed right now. His office was in a historic building downtown, the kind with marble floors and brass fixtures that spoke of old money and older secrets. The directory listed Sterling fiduciary services on the 4th floor. The elevator was one of those elegant cage types that groaned and creaked, but moved with surprising smoothness. A woman in her 60s with perfect posture and a no-nonsense expression greeted me in the waiting room. Ms. Vance, Mr. Sterling is expecting you. She led me through a maze of hallways lined with abstract art that probably cost more than my annual salary and into an office that looked like it had been transplanted from a different century. Arthur Sterling sat behind a massive oak desk, papers spread before him. He looked up as I entered, and his expression was kind but serious. Sit down, Katerina. We have a lot to discuss and not much time. I sat. Mr. Sterling, I appreciate whatever you're trying to do, but I'm not sure why you're so interested in helping me. We barely know each other. Call me Arthur, he said. And you're right, we don't know each other well. But I knew someone who knew you very well. Your grandfather, Silas Barrett. The name hit me like a physical blow. My grandfather? He died when I was 15. I barely remember him. That's because your mother made sure of it, Arthur said bluntly. Silas was my client for 30 years. He was also my friend, and before he died, he set up a trust fund specifically for you with very specific conditions. I couldn't breathe. A trust fund for me. He knew what your mother was like. He'd watched her manipulate and control your father for years. He'd seen how she treated you differently than Tiffany, how she used you as the family workhorse while Tiffany got to be the princess. When he got his diagnosis terminal cancer, he came to me with a plan. Arthur pulled out a leather folder. He created the North Mill Trust, named for the old mill where he built his fortune. The trust has been growing for 14 years. Current value is approximately $2.3 million. The room spun. $2.3 million? But there were conditions, Arthur continued. Silas didn't want to just hand you money. He'd seen too many trust fund kids destroyed by unearned wealth. He wanted you to earn it by proving you had the strength to stand up to your family, the backbone to say no, the wisdom to set boundaries. I don't understand. Arthur opened the folder. Inside was a letter yellowed with age and handwriting I vaguely recognized. Silas wrote you letters, one every year on your birthday from the time he died until you turned 25. 14 letters total. They were supposed to be delivered to you by your mother. I never received any letters. I know. Your mother intercepted every single one. We have proof. Certified mail receipts with her signature. He pulled out a stack of papers. Silas anticipated that she might do this, so he built in safeguards. The trust has been monitoring your situation for years through private investigators and public records. We've documented every time your family has exploited you financially or emotionally. This felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. Why are you telling me this now? Because you met the first condition. You became financially independent. You got a real job with a real salary, and you moved away from the immediate sphere of your family's influence. That activated phase 2 of the trust. He slid a sealed envelope across the desk. This is from your grandfather. You're only supposed to open it when your family forces you to take action, when they push you so far that you finally have to draw a line in the sand. I picked up the envelope. My name was written on it in that same shaky handwriting. They're coming this weekend. They're going to demand money. I can feel it. They're going to demand $39,000, Arthur said calmly. I stared at him. How do you know that? Because your sister Tiffany took out a fraudulent PPP loan during the pandemic using your old address. She claimed she had a home-based business with employees. She got $39,000 from the government and spent it on a new car and a vacation to Turks and Caicos. The loan has been flagged for review. She's panicking. She needs the money to pay it back before she faces federal charges. Oh my God. It gets worse. Your parents co-signed on her mortgage as guarantors. If Tiffany goes down for fraud, it could affect their credit and possibly their house. They're all in this together whether they realize it or not, and they've decided that you're going to be their salvation. I felt sick. What do I do? Arthur leaned back in his chair. You do exactly what your grandfather hoped you'd do. You say no. You set boundaries, you protect yourself, and when they retaliate because they will, you open that envelope and follow his instructions. And if I can't do it if I give them the money, then the trust goes to charity and you get nothing. Your grandfather was very clear. He didn't want his money going to bail out your mother and sister. He wanted it to build your future, but only if you proved you were strong enough to claim it. I looked at the envelope in my hands. This feels like a manipulation. Like another test I have to pass. It is a test, Arthur agreed. But it's a test designed to free you, not trap you. Silas loved you, Katerina. He saw your potential. He saw how your family was crushing you under the weight of their expectations and demands. This is his way of giving you permission to save yourself. I left Arthur's office with the envelope in my purse, feeling like I was carrying a bomb. I had 2 days before my family descended on me like locusts. 2 days to prepare for whatever was coming. I spent Friday deep cleaning my apartment and mentally preparing for battle. I bought groceries, made up the couch with spare blankets, and set up air mattresses for the boys. I told myself I was being a good host, but really, I was building a defense. If they couldn't complain about the accommodations, they'd have one less weapon to use against me. They arrived at 10 a.m. on Saturday, 3 hours late, and completely unapologetic. My mother breezed in first, immediately criticizing the apartment. It's smaller than I thought, and so bland, Katerina. You really should put some color on these walls. I rent, Mom. I can't paint. Well, you could put up some pictures at least. It looks like a hotel room. Tiffany came in next, the boys running ahead of her and immediately starting to touch everything. Boys, be careful. Don't break anything. She looked around. This is cute, Kat. Very minimalist. Is that a thing now? It's called not having a lot of stuff, I said. My father came in last, dragging suitcases. Where should I put these? The bedroom is through there, I said, pointing. Tiffany and David can have the couch. Where's David? I asked, noticing he wasn't with them. Oh, he couldn't make it. Work thing, Tiffany said vaguely. It's fine, gives us more girl time. Her smile was brittle and fake. The boys immediately started fighting over who got which air mattress. Tiffany made no effort to stop them. My mother went straight to the kitchen and started opening cabinets. Do you have any real food? We're starving. The plain food was terrible. There's sandwich stuff in the fridge. Oh, we were hoping you'd take us somewhere nice for lunch to celebrate your new success. I took a breath. I'm on call today, remember? I can't go far from the apartment, but there's a great deli that delivers. My mother's face fell into practiced disappointment. Oh, well, I suppose that will have to do. The rest of the day was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. My mother critiqued everything from my furniture to my career choices to my lack of a boyfriend. Tiffany made pointed comments about how nice it must be to only have to worry about yourself. The boys destroyed my carefully organized living room within an hour, pulling books off shelves and jumping on furniture while Tiffany scrolled through her phone and ignored them. My father, to his credit, tried to keep the peace. He complimented the apartment, asked genuine questions about my job, and even helped me clean up after the boys knocked over a plant. But I could see the stress in his eyes the way he kept glancing at my mother and Tiffany like he was waiting for something. By evening, I was exhausted. I ordered pizza for dinner, which sparked another round of passive aggression from my mother about how I should have cooked something homemade. We ate in tense silence, the boys shouting over each other until finally Tiffany cleared her throat. So, Kat, we actually came here this weekend to talk to you about something important. Here it was. I could feel it coming like a storm. Okay, I said carefully. Tiffany glanced at our mother, who nodded encouragingly. I'm in some financial trouble, like serious trouble. I made a mistake during COVID. I applied for one of those business loans, the PPP thing, and I got approved for $39,000. You don't have a business, I said. Her face flushed. I know. I thought I was going to start a boutique thing, but it fell through, and I used the money for other stuff. And now they're auditing the loans and they want their money back plus penalties, and I could go to jail, Kat. You committed fraud. I made a mistake. Her voice rose. I'm not a criminal. I was just trying to get by during a pandemic like everyone else. By lying to the federal government. My mother jumped in. Don't be so judgmental, Katerina. Your sister made an error in judgment. We all make mistakes. The important thing now is fixing it. How exactly am I involved in fixing Tiffany's fraud? You could help her pay it back, my mother said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. You have a good job now. Surely you could loan her the money. $39,000. Well, yes. I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad, you think I should give Tiffany $39,000? I think family helps family, he said quietly. Did family help me when I needed money for college, or when my car broke down, or when I was working 2 jobs and could barely afford rent? That's different, my mother snapped. You didn't have children. You didn't have real responsibilities. I had myself. That's a real responsibility. Tiffany's eyes filled with tears. Please, Kat, I'm begging you. If I go to jail, what happens to my kids? What happens to my family? Don't you care about your nephews? Of course I care about them, but I'm not responsible for cleaning up your mess. So you're just going to let your sister go to prison? My mother's voice was cold. After everything we've done for you, we raised you, we fed you, we clothed you, and this is how you repay us by abandoning your sister in her darkest hour. The guilt was overwhelming, crushing, but underneath it I felt something else, clarity. For the first time in my life, I saw the pattern with perfect, painful clarity. Every request was framed as a debt I owed. Every refusal was painted as betrayal. They had spent my entire life teaching me that my worth was measured by my usefulness to them. I thought about the envelope in my bedroom. I thought about my grandfather who had seen all of this coming 14 years ago. I thought about Arthur Sterling's words. He wanted you to earn it by proving you had the strength to stand up to your family. I'm going to think about it, I said. The room went silent. Those 5 words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. What? Tiffany's voice was shrill. You're going to think about it. I need an answer now, Kat. This is urgent. And it's also a huge amount of money that I don't have, I said calmly. If you need an immediate answer, then the answer is no. But if you can wait, I'll think about my options and we can discuss this properly. Properly, my mother stood up. What does that mean, properly? It means with documentation, with legal agreements, with repayment terms, with all the things that any legitimate loan would require. You want your own sister to sign a contract? I want transparency, I said. I want everyone to understand exactly what they're agreeing to. No more vague promises that never materialize. No more assumptions that I'll just handle everything. If we're going to do this, we do it right. My father finally looked at me. When did you become so cold? The word stung, but I didn't let it show. I'm not cold, Dad. I'm just tired of being warm for everyone except myself. They left the next morning a day earlier than planned. The atmosphere was glacial. My mother refused to speak to me. Tiffany alternated between crying and glaring. Even the boys seemed to sense the tension and were unusually quiet as they packed their air mattresses. At the door, my father hugged me. "I hope you know what you're doing," he whispered. "So do I said. After they left, I sat in my wrecked apartment and pulled out my phone. I had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, all from family members who had been briefed on the situation and had opinions about my selfishness. I ignored all of them and called Arthur Sterling. "They asked," I said when he answered. "And what did you tell them?" I said I'd think about it. I told them if they wanted my help, we'd do it properly with documentation and legal agreements. "Good. How do you feel?" "Terrified, guilty, like the worst person in the world." "That's the conditioning talking," Arthur said gently. "You've been trained to feel guilty for having boundaries, but boundaries aren't cruel, Katerina. They're necessary. Are you ready for the next step?" "I think so." "Open the envelope." I went to my bedroom and pulled it from my nightstand. My hands shook as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter in my grandfather's handwriting and a business card for a lawyer named Ivy Holloway. The letter read, "My dearest Katerina, if you're reading this, it means you've finally found your backbone. I'm so proud of you. I always knew you had steel in you, even when everyone else treated you like you were made of cotton candy. Your family is going to be angry. They're going to call you selfish and ungrateful. They're going to tell you that you've changed, that money has corrupted you. Let them. You haven't changed. You've just stopped letting them change you. The woman you're becoming is the woman you were always meant to be. Now it's time to claim what's yours. Call Ivy. She has all the documentation you need. And remember, the best revenge is a life well lived. I love you. I believe in you. Make me proud. Your grandfather, Silas Barrett." I was crying by the end of it. I'd spent so many years believing I was never enough, that I owed everyone everything that my purpose was to serve. And here was my grandfather dead for 14 years, telling me I'd been enough all along. I called the number on Ivy Holloway's card. She answered on the second ring. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Sterling told me you'd be calling. I think it's time we met, don't you? How does Monday at 10 a.m. sound at the notary office downtown? And bring your family. All of them." "My family?" "Trust me," Ivy said. "You're going to want witnesses for this." I sent a text to the family group chat, "Meeting Monday at 10 a.m. at the notary office on 5th Street to discuss the loan formally. Everyone needs to be there. Tiffany, bring all your financial documents. Mom and Dad, I'll need you there as witnesses. This is not optional." The responses came fast and furious. Tiffany was confused. My mother was offended that I was treating this like a business transaction. My father asked if this was really necessary. I didn't respond to any of them. I just sent the address and time and turned off notifications. Monday morning arrived with all the warmth of a dental appointment. I dressed carefully, choosing a blazer and slacks, the kind of outfit that said I meant business. I arrived at the notary office at 9:45 and found Arthur Sterling and Ivy Holloway already there, along with a notary public who introduced herself as Mrs. Chen. Ivy Holloway was not what I expected. She was young, probably early 30s, with bright red hair and a smile that could cut glass. "Katerina, so good to finally meet you. Arthur's told me so much about you. Are you ready for this?" "I don't even know what this is," I admitted. "You will. Trust the process." She gestured to a conference room. "We'll meet in here." My family arrived at 10:15 late as always, and full of complaints about parking. Tiffany looked anxious, her eyes darting around the official-looking office. My mother looked suspicious. My father just looked tired. "What is this?" my mother demanded when she saw Arthur and Ivy. "Who are these people?" "I'm Arthur Sterling, fiduciary trustee," Arthur said smoothly. "And this is Ivy Holloway, attorney at law. Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." "Kat, what's going on?" Tiffany's voice was shrill. "You said we were meeting to discuss a loan. Why are there lawyers here?" "Because there's more to discuss than just a loan," I said. "Please, sit." They sat reluctantly, my mother radiating hostility. Mrs. Chen set up her recording equipment. This meeting is being officially recorded and notarized for legal purposes. Please state your names for the record. After everyone had identified themselves, Ivy opened her briefcase. We're here today to discuss several matters. First, the request made by Tiffany Vance Chin for $39,000 from her sister Katerina Vance. Second, the conditions under which such a loan might be provided. And third, the matter of the North Mill Trust established by Silas Barrett for the sole benefit of Katerina Vance. My mother's face went white. The trust that's not real. My father left his money to charity. Actually, he left it to Katerina, Arthur said. In a trust that has been managed by my firm for the past 14 years, the trust has specific conditions that must be met before Ms. Vance can access the funds. Those conditions have now been satisfied. What conditions? My father asked. That she prove financial independence and demonstrate the ability to set boundaries against family exploitation, Ivy said bluntly. Mr. Barrett was very concerned about his daughter's family, particularly her tendency to use Katerina as an emotional and financial resource without reciprocation. That's ridiculous, my mother sputtered. We're a loving family. We've always supported Katerina. Have you? Ivy pulled out a folder. Because our records show a different story. We have documentation of every financial request made to Katerina over the past 10 years. 67 separate occasions where she provided money to family members. Total amount $82,000. Amount repaid $0. The room went silent. Tiffany looked sick. My father stared at his hands. My mother's face was red with fury. You've been spying on us, she hissed. We've been protecting our clients' interests, Arthur corrected. Part of the trust's mandate was to monitor whether Katerina was being exploited. The answer, unfortunately, was yes. Ivy continued, her voice calm and professional. The final triggering condition for the trust was that the family would make a request so egregious, so beyond reasonable bounds, that Ms. Vance would be forced to choose between her own financial security and their demands. The $39,000 request for Tiffany's fraudulent loan repayment qualifies. Fraudulent? My father looked at Tiffany. You said it was a legitimate business loan. I thought it was. Tiffany's eyes welled with tears. I was going to start a business. You used Katerina's old address on the application, Ivy said. You claimed to have 5 employees when you had none. You used the funds for personal expenses rather than business costs. That's federal loan fraud, Mrs. Chin. The penalties include repayment fines and potentially 5 years in federal prison. Tiffany burst into tears. My mother put an arm around her. This is cruel. You're terrorizing your own sister. What kind of monster are you, Katerina? The words should have hurt. A week ago, they would have destroyed me. But sitting in that conference room with my grandfather's letter in my purse and a team of professionals on my side, I felt something I'd never felt before when facing my family. Strength. I'm the kind of person who's done being used, I said quietly. I'm the kind of person who recognizes that love shouldn't be measured in dollars. I'm the kind of person who knows that saying no doesn't make me a monster. It makes me human. Beautiful speech, my mother spat. But it doesn't change the fact that your sister needs help and you're refusing to provide it. Actually, help has already been provided, Arthur said. He pulled out another document. The North Mill Trust has already paid Tiffany's debt to the federal government, all $39,000 plus interest and penalties. Total paid $42,730. Tiffany's head snapped up. What? The trust paid your debt 3 days ago, Ivy explained. You're no longer in danger of federal prosecution. However, you now owe that money to the trust, not to the government, and the trust has very specific terms for repayment. She slid a contract across the table. You will repay the full amount at 6% interest over 10 years. Payments will be automatically deducted from your bank account. If you miss a payment, the trust has the right to pursue collection through legal means, including wage garnishment and property liens. You will also sign a cease and desist agreement stipulating that you will make no further financial requests of Katerina Vance for a period of 5 years. You can't be serious, Tiffany whispered. I'm completely serious, Ivy said. Sign or the trust will report the original fraud to federal authorities and you can take your chances in court. Your choice. This is blackmail, my mother said. This is consequences, I said. I looked at my sister. You committed a crime, Tiff. I'm giving you a way out that doesn't involve prison. Take it or leave it." Tiffany looked at our mother, then our father, then back at the contract. With shaking hands, she picked up the pen and signed. "Excellent," Ivy said, taking the document and passing it to Mrs. Chen for notarization. "Now let's discuss the other matter, the letters." "What letters?" my father asked. Ivy pulled out a stack of envelopes yellowed with age. Silas Barrett wrote 14 letters to Katerina, one for each birthday from age 15 to 28. They were sent via certified mail to the Vance family home addressed to Katerina Vance. Every single one was signed for by Evelyn Vance. None were delivered to Katerina. She spread the receipts across the table. My mother's signature on every one. My father stared at them. "Evelyn, you kept these from her." "They were full of poison," my mother said defensively. "My father was trying to turn Katerina against her own family. I was protecting her." "You were controlling her," I said. "You kept me from knowing that someone loved me enough to leave me something. You kept me trapped and broke so I'd never have the option to leave." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" I felt tears prick my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "You kept me dependent. You made me believe my only value was in how much I could give you. You taught me that saying no made me selfish. You trained me to feel guilty for existing." "We gave you everything," my mother shouted. "You gave me the bare minimum that parents are legally required to provide," I shot back. "And then you spent the next decade making me pay it back with interest." "Well, I'm done paying. I'm done apologizing. I'm done setting myself on fire to keep you warm." My father looked between us, his face stricken. "Cat, sweetheart, I didn't know about the letters, I swear." "But you knew about everything else," I said softly. "You knew Mom guilted me into giving up my college fund. You knew Tiffany never paid me back for the car. You knew they treated me like an ATM, and you never said a word because it was easier to let me be the sacrifice than to stand up to them." He flinched like I'd hit him. "I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough anymore, Dad." Arthur cleared his throat. "There's one more matter to discuss. The distribution of the trust funds." All eyes turned to him. I'd been so focused on the confrontation that I'd almost forgotten about the money. "The North Mill Trust, as of this morning, has a value of $2.3 million, Arthur said. "Per the terms of the trust and Katerina's successful fulfillment of all conditions, she now has full access to these funds. The trust recommends the following distribution: 60%, or approximately $1.4 million, to be transferred to the Atria Ortho Community Foundation for a kinetic knee program for uninsured patients. 40%, or approximately $920,000, to be transferred to a secured personal account accessible only by Katerina Vance." The numbers were so large they didn't feel real, but the implications were very real. I was wealthy. Independently, completely wealthy. I never had to worry about money again. I never had to take anyone's calls or feel guilty about saying no. I was free. My mother's face was twisted with rage and something else: greed. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to get her hands on my money. "There's one more thing," Ivy said, and her voice was sharp enough to cut. "The trust has prepared a family conduct agreement. If any member of the Vance family makes defamatory statements about Katerina, harasses her, threatens her, or makes further unreasonable financial demands, they will face immediate legal action, including restraining orders and potential civil suits. Tiffany has already signed her cease and desist as part of her loan agreement. Evelyn and Robert, you have a choice. Sign this agreement acknowledging these terms, or leave here today knowing that any future contact with your daughter will be considered harassment." She pushed 2 contracts across the table. "You have 5 minutes to decide." My mother grabbed the paper and read it, her lips moving silently. "This is insane. You can't dictate how a mother talks to her daughter." "I can dictate how you talk about me," I said. "You don't get to poison my name because I finally stood up for myself. You don't get to play the victim when you were the one using me. Sign it or leave." "And if we leave?" my father asked quietly. "Then we have no relationship," I said, and the words hurt, even though they were true. "I'm not interested in staying in touch with people who only want me when I'm useful to them." The silence stretched. My mother stood up abruptly. "Fine. You want to cut us out of your life. Be my guest. But don't come crawling back when you realize money can't buy you a family." "I'm not cutting you out," I said. "I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. You can sign that paper and we can work on building a healthier relationship. Or you can leave and prove that you were never interested in a relationship, just in what I could provide." My father picked up the pen. "I'll sign it." "Robert," my mother hissed. "I'll sign it," he repeated, "because I love my daughter and I want to be in her life, even if it means acknowledging that I've failed her." He signed the document with shaking hands. "I'm sorry, Katerina, for all of it, for being too weak to protect you, for choosing peace over justice, for letting them treat you like this. You deserved better." Those words broke something in me. Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Thank you," I whispered. My mother stood frozen, the pen in her hand. I could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride versus pragmatism. Control versus connection. Finally, she signed her movements angry and jerky. "This doesn't mean I agree with any of this. I still think you're being manipulated by that dead old man and his vulture lawyers." "Noted," Ivy said, taking the signed documents. "Mrs. Chin, if you could notarize these." After the notarization was complete, Ivy gathered her papers. "One final item. Katerina the Trust would like to make the following additional recommendations. First, that you change your phone number and only provide it to trusted individuals. Second, that you consider individual therapy to process the family trauma. The trust will cover all costs. Third, that you establish a foundation in your grandfather's name to ensure his legacy of helping people escape exploitation. What do you think?" I thought about my grandfather writing those letters year after year, knowing I'd never receive them but writing them anyway. I thought about Arthur Sterling spending 14 years monitoring my situation and waiting for the moment I'd be ready to help myself. I thought about who I'd been 6 months ago, drowning in dishwater and family obligations, and who I was now sitting in a conference room with lawyers and documents that said I mattered. "I think my grandfather was a brilliant man," I said, "and I think I'd like to make him proud." After the meeting ended, my family left without another word. My mother stormed out first, Tiffany trailing behind her, still crying. My father lingered at the door. "I meant what I said. I'm sorry, and I'm proud of you even if I have no right to be." "You're my dad," I said. "You always have the right to be proud. You just also have the responsibility to show up, to protect, to see when something's wrong and say something." "I know." He looked older, suddenly worn down. "I'll do better, I promise." "I'll believe it when I see it," I said, not unkindly. "But I hope you mean it." After they left, I sat in that conference room with Arthur and Ivy, feeling hollowed out and somehow fuller than I'd ever been. "How do you feel?" Arthur asked. "Free," I said. "Terrified, guilty, relieved, all of it at once." "That's normal," Ivy said. "You just broke a lifetime of conditioning in 1 hour. It's going to take time to adjust." "What happens now?" "Now you live your life," Arthur said simply. "You do your work, you build your foundation, you create boundaries and maintain them, and slowly over time you'll realize that the guilt gets quieter, the manipulation loses its power, and you'll become the person you were always meant to be." I left that office and walked out into a bright November afternoon. My phone was already buzzing with texts from extended family members who had been briefed by my mother on my betrayal. I turned off the phone and dropped it in my purse. I'd deal with that later. Instead, I called Ruth at Maple Steel Diner. "Kat, how'd the big showdown go?" I laughed a slightly hysterical sound. "I won, I think. Ruth, I want to buy 30% of the diner, and I want to give everyone on night shift a 15% raise. And I want to promote Miguel to shift manager, and I want to hire you as a consultant to help me figure out what other businesses need saving." Silence. Then, "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. You saw me when I was nothing. You believed in me when nobody else did. That matters. That means something. So, yeah, I'm serious." Ruth was crying. I could hear it through the phone. "You're a good person, Katerina Vance. Don't let anyone ever tell you different." Over the next few months, I built a life I'd never dreamed possible. The job at Atria Ortho flourished. I was promoted to senior regional director within 6 months. The Kinetic Knee program I'd funded through the Community Foundation was serving dozens of uninsured patients. The Silas Barrett Freedom Foundation, dedicated to helping people escape financial and emotional exploitation, was processing its first round of grant applications. I bought a house. An actual house with a yard and a second bedroom that I turned into an office. I adopted a dog, a scraggly rescue named Hank, who had trust issues and fit right in. I made friends, real friends who liked me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. I started therapy and learned words for things I'd experienced: emotional manipulation, financial abuse, parentification, learned helplessness. I learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was self-preservation. My mother didn't speak to me for 4 months. Then she sent a text: "Your father's birthday is next week. Are you coming?" No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened, just an assumption that time had erased the need for accountability. I replied, "No thank you, enjoy the celebration." She called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Finally, I answered. "How can you miss your own father's birthday?" "Easy," I said. "I make other plans." "This is ridiculous. You're holding a grudge over a little misunderstanding." It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom. It was a pattern of behavior that spanned decades. And until you're ready to actually acknowledge that and apologize for your part in it, I don't have anything to say to you. "I have nothing to apologize for. I was your mother. I raised you. I did my best." "Your best included stealing my mail, taking my money, and teaching me that my only value was in how useful I was to you. If that's your best, I'd hate to see your worst." She hung up on me. I blocked her number. My father called a few days later. "She's very hurt, Kat." "I'm sure she is," I said. "And I'm sorry for that, but I'm not responsible for managing her feelings anymore. That's her work to do." "She's not going to change," he said quietly. "I know. That's why I have boundaries." "What about me?" His voice cracked. "Do I get boundaries too, or am I shut out entirely?" "You get boundaries," I said. "But yours are different. You acknowledged what happened. You apologized. You're trying. That matters. So here's my boundary. I'll have a relationship with you, but I won't discuss Mom or Tiffany with you. I won't be used as a go-between. I won't take messages or pass information. You want to see me, we see each other one-on-one. You want to talk, we talk about our lives, not about theirs. Can you do that?" "Yes," he said, "I can do that." And he did. We met for lunch once a month. It was awkward at first, both of us learning how to have a relationship that wasn't mediated through my mother's expectations. But slowly, carefully, we built something real. I learned things about my father I'd never known. He'd wanted to be a teacher, but his father had insisted he go into business. He'd loved poetry, but stopped writing it when my mother said it was impractical. He'd been living a half-life for so long, he'd forgotten what a full one looked like. "I'm proud of you," he said at one of our lunches maybe 6 months after the confrontation. "Not just for the money or the success, for finding yourself, for refusing to disappear like I did." "It's not too late for you," I said. "It might be," he said sadly, "but I'm glad it's not too late for you." Tiffany made her loan payments on time for the first 3 months, then started missing them. The trust's collection agency sent letters, then began wage garnishment. She posted a tearful video on Instagram about how her cruel sister had ruined her life. Ivy Holloway sent a cease and desist letter and contacted Instagram's legal department. The video came down within 24 hours, and Tiffany's account was suspended for violating terms of service regarding harassment. She didn't contact me again. Nora, my cousin, became one of my closest friends. She moved to Raleigh for a job, and we had dinner every week talking about everything and nothing, building the kind of relationship I'd always wanted with Tiffany, but never had. She told me stories about the family's reaction to my betrayal. Apparently, I was either a cautionary tale about pride or an inspiration for setting boundaries, depending on which family member you asked. "Aunt Linda asked me how you did it," Nora said one night over wine. "How you just walked away from family." "I didn't walk away," I corrected. "I set boundaries. There's a difference." "Not to them. To them, boundaries are abandonment." "Then they can keep thinking that. I'm done trying to control how they see me." A year after the confrontation, I received a letter from my mother. It was short-written in her careful cursive. "Katerina, I've been in therapy. My therapist says I need to make amends. I'm sorry for keeping your grandfather's letters. I'm sorry for making you feel like you owed us. I'm sorry for not seeing you as a person with your own needs and dreams. I was wrong. I hope someday you can forgive me, Mom." I read it 3 times. It was everything I'd ever wanted to hear from her. And yet it felt hollow, like words on a page rather than truth in the heart. Maybe because it had come from a therapist's instruction rather than genuine realization. Maybe because it didn't include any acknowledgement of the specific harms or any plan for changed behavior. Maybe because I'd grown enough to realize that an apology without changed actions was just words. I wrote back, "Thank you for the apology. I appreciate the effort it took to write it. I'm not ready to resume a relationship, but I'm willing to consider it in the future if I see consistent changed behavior over time. In the meantime, I wish you well in your therapy journey." She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. 2 years after that meeting in the notary's office, I stood in front of a room full of people at the first annual Silas Barrett Freedom Foundation Gala. We'd just announced grants totaling $500,000 to organizations helping people escape financial abuse and toxic family systems. The room was full of social workers, therapists, financial advisors, and survivors who were using their experiences to help others. I thought about my grandfather, who I barely remembered, but who had known me well enough to predict exactly what I'd need. I thought about Arthur Sterling, who'd watched over me like a guardian angel made of legal documents and tough love. I thought about myself 2 years ago, standing in dishwater and feeling like I was drowning, unable to imagine a future where I could breathe. My grandfather used to say that the word "no" is complete sentence, I said into the microphone. I didn't understand that for most of my life. I thought no needed justification, explanation, apology. I thought no made me selfish. I thought no meant I didn't love people. But I've learned that no is actually an act of love. It's loving yourself enough to have boundaries. It's loving others enough to let them face the consequences of their choices. It's loving the world enough to protect your ability to show up as your whole self rather than a drained, resentful version of who you could be. I looked out at the crowd at the faces of people who understood who'd been where I'd been. So, this foundation exists to help people learn what I learned, that you are not responsible for other people's poor choices. That love without boundaries is not love at all. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable dysfunction. And that no matter how long you've been trapped in a toxic pattern, it's never too late to break free. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, people came up to me with their stories. A woman who'd finally stopped paying her brother's gambling debts. A man who'd cut contact with parents who used him as a retirement plan. A young person who'd chosen student loans over staying home and being their family's free childcare. Story after story of people choosing themselves, often at great cost because staying would have cost them more. I went home that night to my house, my dog, my life that I'd built from scratch. I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine and looked at the stars. My phone buzzed, a text from my father. "Watched your speech online. Your grandfather would be so proud. So am I." I smiled and texted back, "Thank you, Dad. Want to get lunch next week?" His response was immediate. "I'd love that." I thought about my mother, who had never acknowledged the speech, the foundation, or any of my accomplishments unless they somehow benefited her. I thought about Tiffany, who was still making minimum payments on her loan and would be for the next 7 years. I thought about all the family members who'd cut me off for refusing to play my assigned role. And I realized I didn't miss them. Not the versions of them that I'd known anyway. Those versions had only loved me when I was useful. These days, I was surrounded by people who loved me when I was just me. Messy, imperfect, boundaried me. That was the real power of no. Not the money, though, that certainly helped. Not the revenge, though watching my family face consequences for their actions had been grimly satisfying. The real power was in the reclamation of myself. The understanding that I was worth protecting, worth prioritizing, worth the discomfort of other people's disappointment. My grandfather had known it all along. He'd built me an escape hatch and hidden it behind a test that forced me to save myself. Because that was the thing about people like us. People who'd spent our lives being useful. No one else could save us. We had to learn to save ourselves. So that's what I did. I learned to say no. I learned that boundaries weren't walls, they were doors that I controlled. I learned that family is supposed to be the people who help you grow, not the people who keep you small. And I learned that the most radical act of love I could perform was refusing to set myself on fire to keep anyone else warm. The power of no wasn't just about refusing. It was about choosing. Choosing myself. Choosing my future. Choosing the life I deserved over the life I'd been assigned. And that choice, terrifying and liberating in equal measure, had set me free. So here's my question for you. How long are you going to let people treat you like a doormat? How many more years are you going to sacrifice yourself for people who wouldn't do the same for you? What would your life look like if you finally put yourself first? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Hit that like button if you've ever felt trapped by family obligation. Subscribe if you want to hear more about building boundaries and reclaiming your life. Because we all deserve better than being someone else's solution to their problems. We deserve to be the hero of our own story, not the background character in theirs. The power of no is real, and it's waiting for you to claim it.